We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. My guest, News Channel 5 investigative reporter Ben Hall. Nice to have him with us. And we're with you right now on the Plus. You can call in. We'll take your comments. We're also streaming live right now on Facebook at newschannel5.com. And lots of calls and questions about this story. Let's go next to, we had lost him earlier, but I think he's back. Are you there, Joe?
Hey.
Hey, go ahead, Joe.
I missed the first part there. I had to get off.
Yeah.
This DA is confusing to me why he hadn't done, reversed his decision a little bit on this from what I can see on the tape. Now, these policemen, if I would have been working for this sheriff and he told me to shoot this guy, I would have had to disobey his orders and said, I'm not going to shoot him. Not,
Well, you fall back on your training, which is what I was saying. The sheriff wasn't there witnessing it when he said, oh, look, here he comes, shoot him. Sheriff was across the county. He wasn't even there yet. And he's telling him use any force necessary. And he's telling him that before he knows even if they're at risk. It sounded to me like he was just concerned. What was the bite about? I don't want him damaging my cars?
That's the allegation, that he was concerned. He knew they were doing something called a pit maneuver. A pit maneuver is where you try and guide the driver off the road. Again, the driver was not going off the road. And so the patrol cars were getting damaged. Then the sheriff comes over the two-way and says, take him out by deadly force if necessary. But there was clearly frustration that this chase was not ending, that they couldn't get the driver off the road. And again, they must have felt that it was putting citizens and others in danger.
But the sheriff couldn't have known that at that moment. He wasn't there to see it. He's maybe listening to scanner traffic. Maybe he's assuming, by the way, that road was empty. Okay, wasn't a ton of traffic on it. And he gave the order. 111, he gave the order to potentially go ahead and shoot him without knowing the full situation. There. Now later, you may argue if the video shows that he was turning around and going to plow into those deputies, they had a right to shoot. Maybe that's what the DA would say. But when the sheriff told them to use any force necessary, including shoot him, he didn't know. He wasn't there.
The sheriff was not on the scene.
I mean, come on,
it's unusual to issue a directive to use deadly force when you're not on the scene. It's unusual.
This is just common sense, folks. That's why it's disturbing to me the DA has not said he's going to go back and at least reevaluate. I don't get that. Digging the heels in for the sake of digging your heels in. Let's go to JJ. Hi, JJ. Are you there, JJ?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I just have a question. I live in Cookville, right here next door to White County, which I lived in White County for years when I was younger, but it just seems like it keeps getting worse, why do cops not go to jail? My point blank, just like that all good cop.
Well, the simple answer to that question is that police officers have a very, very difficult job. And I think you're naive if you don't think when these cases are being reviewed by the authorities in position to do this, that they're not giving the officers a benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry. Only in the most egregious cases, and even then sometimes no, do we see officers being punished for doing bad things. We're in the news business. I see it day in, day out. Only the most egregious. And I understand giving cops a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but when it's something that's so clear cut and you still do that, there's a problem with that.
Who do you go after here? Do you file charges against the officer who shot, or is it more the sheriff who gave the directive? And maybe the DA wasn't sure exactly who he goes after.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Certainly the video where they knock the driver off the road, Michael Dial off the road, and then immediately before he even unbuckles his seatbelt, he fires 2 shots out the window, then he unbuckles his seatbelt, fires multiple shots. It's hard to see how his life was in danger at that moment. Now I'm sure he's got a lot of adrenaline going and there's all kinds of stuff going on. But again, when he was upset afterward, the sheriff said, you're just following my order. It was my order. You did what I told you. And then when you hear the sheriff's true thoughts afterward, again, that's where I go back to.
Yeah, and that's kind of disturbing. Let's go next to Ann. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Ben on his piece last night and for joining you this morning. He's following in some heavy footsteps. I think White County, as well as what's happening in Davidson County, are 2 prime examples why we do need oversight committees. Until we have oversight committees, we will not know how our police and our judges and our sheriffs are doing their jobs. Just like with doctors and lawyers, you have good and bad. You have good teachers and you have bad teachers. You have good and bad in all walks of life. You have good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods in all areas of your cities. And until we adjust to that thinking and that mentality, we're all going to suffer.
Problem is, I mean, she's right, and we're looking at an oversight committee here in Metro now.
Right.
But, who's going to pay for that in a small community like that? That's the issue in these small communities, right? I mean, I don't see that changing.
The more oversight, the better. And traditionally, the media has played that role. What sort of media presence is there in some of these small counties? It's not what it should be, and it's probably less than it used to be, which is disturbing. I mean, I think the media is perfectly suited for providing that kind of oversight. If you had an oversight committee, how do you appoint that person in a small county? Is that person just another friend of the people in power? I don't know. More oversight is good. The more people looking at a situation, the better. You have to believe people are ultimately good, and if they are looking at situations that hopefully in the end the right outcome will come about. But I think it's really the job of the media, and the media is weaker than it's been in the past.
I know, and I was going to end the show on that. We'll still take some calls, but you're right. I mean, folks, look, the media sometimes takes a beating, and a lot of this fake news stuff that runs out there, I'm not saying there isn't some. Ben's story ain't fake news, all right? The media plays that role. So when you want to bash the media or TV news or print media, pick your spots. But without that, you don't know about this story, okay? And you don't know what's happening there. Without that, you don't know about the situation with Mayor Megan Barry. You don't know about those types of things without the media at least checking. Do you want to know about that stuff? I hope so, because if you don't, just go live under a rock. I mean, it's an important thing, checks and balances. We say it all the time. It's the basic stuff we grew up with. But the media is there at least to try to hold the powerful accountable, because if not, no one else is going to.
There are people that don't want you to know about that stuff.
That's right.
Life would be a lot easier for those in power if no one were asking questions and they didn't have to.
And things would be far worse.
And they would be.
Far worse. So I'm here to just lay that out. Just remember that. Next time you say, darn that media, well, just remember the good that's done as well. And this is a fine piece by Ben. Let's go to Shane. Hi, Shane.
Yeah, hi there.
Hey, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that my entire life long I've watched as police forces throughout Tennessee have become more and more militarized. And it is obviously a difficult job that they do. And I just wanted to point out that it becomes increasingly difficult the more laws that are put on the books, the more that people are induced by politicians to criminalize things that shouldn't necessarily be criminalized, the harder their jobs get, the more stressful they get, and the more incidences like this that we're going to see. Yeah. A good example of that is the drug war. I mean, it seems that increasingly around the United States, people are decriminalizing certain drugs, as we've all read about and heard of. And all that does is it takes a lot of money out of the hands of dealers that are, underground. It takes money out of cartels' hands. It empowers small businesses, and it also makes the job of policing a little bit less challenging.
And that's another show. That's another show. And I'm sure he's talking about medical marijuana, some recreational marijuana, but there's some merit to what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. So
we get back to that on a lot of shows on Open Line, too. That have nothing to do with it. Somehow that gets in.
Somehow that gets in there. Yes. It's right now it's happening. People are talking about it. All right, listen, just in our remaining moments, Ben, clearly you've said you're working on several angles on this story. You're going to have more coming in the next week or so. You have some things you're working on. I don't want you to give it away, but I assume...
Yeah, how do I not? Yes, we're definitely working on more. There have been, as we had a caller say, other problems in that county, other lawsuits filed against that county. Certainly taxpayers there have had to pay for a lot of lawsuits that have been filed against the sheriff. So we'll look at that. We'll look at some other things that you discover when you delve into that body camera video. So yeah, there's more to come.
More to come on that. And the status of the lawsuit filed by the widow, that's just in the early stages now. So I mean, do we see something happening soon on that?
Not soon. That was just filed. It was filed Friday.
Because I mean, one thing I'd be real interested in seeing is the response when it's filed by the sheriff or whatever, the county attorney, just to see what they're saying. I assume they're going to defend the county,
I think they would deny a lot of the allegations. They would say this guy should have pulled over, and they would say what the sheriff said was wrong, but it was just in the heat of the moment.
In the heat of the moment.
But they haven't said any of that. That's just what I think they would say.
No, we're just thinking. Look, the attorney in this county has had a lot of practice. I mean, he's got a lot of practice. And the other part of this that really I'm waiting to see, since this has gone national, if you Google White County, Tennessee sheriff, I mean, all of these stories will come up from, Huffington Post and others. So it's on the radar now, and you do wonder if maybe someone there in White County or elsewhere, the Justice Department takes note of something like this, because that's what they do. They look for public corruption. Okay,
right.
And I'm not saying at this point there's public corruption necessarily, but this is a case of something they might want to look at to see if excessive force was used, and whether or not this individual was shot and they denied him his constitutional rights by moving the way they did. Again, those are questions to be asked, and the Justice Department could step in, whether the DA wants to do anything or not. And it doesn't look like he's going to do anything.
At this point, no.
And he's not going to sit down with an interview, really? He doesn't want to do
we had an interview set up. He decided not to do that. We still leave that open, but he did send a statement. Again, do not condone or support the behavior and comments of the sheriff, but the shooting itself, he feels like was justified.
It remains justified now based on the investigation by the TBI and what he decided. But you do wonder, against the whole backdrop, because that's out there. Well, I'm going to say this, but no one's going to scrutinize it because it's White County.
Right.
Now it's being scrutinized, so questions are being asked.
Lots of questions.
Great job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Always
Nick.
come up with really good stuff.
Always good to be on
You don't mind
Morning
coming
Line.
over here. I mean, I wouldn't mind being invited on Open Line someday.
I want to have you on Open Line.
Someday, one of these stories, just bring me on.
Okay. All right, that'd be great.
Because how many times have you done this for me? You guys are very nice. Thank you, Ben. We'll look forward to your next story, all right?
Thank you.
We'll take a break, wrap things up right after this.